Hi guys, my name is Nicole, licensed clinician, and we're here talking about everyday things that impact our mental health and fitness. We're kind of in the holiday season, so we are in a holiday series. And this should be airing the day after Christmas Day. And so let's talk about recovery from the holiday season. Now, a lot of times, um, we go into situations, holidays, whatever, with maybe high expectations, like talked about in the last video, and we are disappointed, or we're in a place where we've been working on ourselves for the past year, or things have changed in our lives so much that our priorities are different, and we're really able to kind of see some of the people in our lives through different lenses. And maybe that means that there are some boundaries that have to be put into place for any further or future interactions with this person, or maybe it means that there are no more interactions with this person. And coming to grips with that is a difficult thing. There's grief associated with that as well, where there's like this loss of what that relationship could have been, um, a feeling sometimes of, especially if you tend to be like a people pleaser type of person, a feeling of guilt for putting in the boundary, for saying like, hey, like this is not a way that is acceptable to treat me or to treat my children or to treat my husband, my wife, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, whatever it is. Um, and either a like deciding like, do I have that conversation with the person, or has the conversation come and gone already, and now it's just time to implement that consequence. And I think it's important to remember that when we're instilling boundaries, boundaries are not rules. Rules are for engagement, basically, right? So, hey, like, you're going to speak to me with respect, and we'll speak to each other with respect, um what have you. It's just like certain topics are off the table, right? So maybe you have a rule of like, like, we're not going to talk about politics, or we're not going to talk about religion, because like we just don't see eye to eye on that, and I don't want that to be something that gets between us, right? So those are rules that you can enforce by changing the subject if that person brings up that topic, right? A boundary is more of an action. So it's something like, hey, you treated me in a way that made me feel very uncomfortable. I spoke up to you about it and you brushed me off. And so that to me means that you are not either in tune or caring about, or whatever, um, my feelings and my ability to speak up for myself. There's not like respect there or what have you. And then the boundary is, this is not acceptable. And because of your behavior, I am going to whatever the consequence is, right? Um, not speak to you anymore, or maybe if it's like a friendship, right, or like whatever, maybe we don't hang out one on one anymore because you're like a drain on my emotional resources, because we always talk about like this one thing over and over again. So maybe then like the boundary is that we only hang out in groups. Um, so I encourage you really to think about the difference between rules and boundaries. And I can talk a little bit more about that in another video. But when we're implementing those with family, it can be really hard, because then it's like, oh, but she's my mom, he's my dad, that's my brother. What about my nieces and nephews? What about, my kids' cousins and that relationship there? Um, and ultimately, what we have to kind of remind ourselves is that typically we're not putting boundaries in place for people who are happy, healthy people, right? Typically, we put boundaries in place with people who are toxic to some level, and can't just have a regular conversation and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that like I said that and that hurt your feelings, or with the ability to change that behavior. So the boundaries are really in place not to like teach them how to interact with us, but really to keep ourselves and our families safe and protected from the toxic stuff that comes out. um, so if you're in that situation, I am sorry, it really sucks. when you come to that point and that horrible, like, gut-wrenching feeling of acknowledging that this person is not going to be the person that I need them to be, whether that's for myself or for my kids or, just in general, and for my own well-being or for the well-being of my children or my spouse or, whoever, um, this relationship is going to have to look different. It's hard. It really is. It really is, because it almost feels like that hope is dying of having the relationship that you need. Uh, so I really encourage you, if you are in that position right now, to please, please, please speak about it with your therapist. If you don't already have a therapist, reach out to one, because it can be a long process or an in-depth process of teasing out some of that guilt and the justification and the rules versus the boundaries and the conversations and the arguments and all that stuff, and kind of like filtering through and processing through all of that and really coming to a conclusion of what is actually the best thing for you and for your children, and how to implement that in a way that is true and genuine to yourself, but also learning how to implement that boundary and enforcing that boundary too. Because that is where the discomfort really happens. If we implement boundaries, people tend to push back against them. Because if we're implementing boundaries, they are not healthy, usually, people. And people in general tend to push back against pushback, right? So they're going to feel like, oh, like, this is new behavior from this person. Like, let me test that out a little bit. Let me push it. Let me push it. Let me push it. And so they do that. And it's up to us, the boundary putter, sure, to enforce that boundary and say, like, hey, you know what? Like, you can ask me 47 times and my answer is still going to be no. And no is a full sentence. End of story. So again, I really encourage you to connect with a therapist and talk through these things so that you can feel more confident in your decision and in the actual action taken to put that boundary into place.